Hi, everyone. Welcome to the SAS Global Forum 2020 virtual presentation. My name is Brad Morris, and I'm the author of this paper, SAS Visual Analytics SDK, Embed SAS Visual Analytics Insights in your web pages and web apps. So let's get right into this. A little bit of background on me. I work for SAS. I manage the SAS Visual Analytics SDK and SAS Graph Builder teams. I joined SAS in 2001. I have a computer science degree from North Carolina State. And I started as a developer and worked on SAS Visual Analytics in some form or fashion through the life cycle since its inception. So what is the SAS Visual Analytics SDK? This really starts with a description of what an SDK is. SDK stands for Software Development Kit. And that can take on a few different meanings depending on the context. In this case, what we're describing, what Software Development Kit means for us is this is a JavaScript library that provides JavaScript APIs and custom HTML web elements. And the functionality that it provides is to allow you to interface with SAS via Visual Analytics. This allows you to embed insights into your own web pages. This could be reports, report pages, containers, individual objects. And it also provides a JavaScript API for more deeper integration using data-driven content and report parameters. So what I'm going to show you all today is give you an overview of both the custom element APIs that we have and how to use them. I'll show demonstrations for embedding reports, report pages, and report objects. I'll also show the JavaScript API and show some examples of what you can do with data-driven content and report parameters. But I first want to start off with pointing you to a resource that's going to be very handy if you're getting familiar with the SDK. And that's our developer guide, our developer API documentation. It's out on developer.sas.com. I'll give you a quick overview of that now. This is the main page, and we've got a lot of information here, some general getting started information, which includes some information on setting up your VIA system in order to allow connection back to the SDK. That includes topics like cross-origin resource sharing, cross-site request forgery, and setting up guest access if you want to allow that. These are all things that need to be set up ahead of time and configured on VIA in order for the SDK to be able to connect from a different origin back to SAS VIA in order to read and then render the report content. We've also got more detailed guides on things like data-driven content, as well as API references on all of our JavaScript and custom element API. So jumping from there, let's get right into the meat of this. And the first thing that I want to show is how to load the SDK. Now, there's really two ways to access the SDK. We publish the SDK out on NPM, which is Node Package Manager. So if you're familiar with JavaScript at all, you're likely familiar with NPM. This is where all third-party modules are published, and there's no difference here with the SDK. Our module is under the namespace SAS software, and the actual module name is VA report components. So being published out on NPM, you have the option of doing an actual NPM install, which will pull down this SDK library onto your machine, which then you can deploy alongside with your web page if you want. But the easy option here, and the one I'm going to show today, is actually accessing the SDK through a CDN. CDN is a content delivery network. And there are a couple public CDNs that duplicate and mirror NPM content. One of those is unpackaged.com. So what I'm showing here is the ability to create a script tag in your HTML and add it into your head for your HTML, setting the source to the unpackaged.com location of VA report components. And you can see in this case, I'm pointing to version 0.4.0. So just a quick note, what I'm going to demo today is this version 0.4.0 that is not available yet. It's going to be published in the next week or two. So by the time you view this, hopefully 0.4.0 is out there. So what this does is this brings in the actual JavaScript library, and what's loaded makes the JavaScript API and the custom web element declarations available to you in your HTML page or in your JavaScript. So moving on quickly from this is to a discussion of the custom elements. I mentioned we've got the JavaScript API and we have the custom elements. So the custom elements provide a declarative way in your HTML markup to define, in this case, a SAS report. So this is showing our SAS report custom element. And it's really quite simple. This allows you to treat SAS report just like any other built-in HTML element that the browser provides like a div or an image tag or an anchor tag. This is just another tag in HTML that we've provided, and it is made available to you through loading the SDK JavaScript. So what can you do with the SAS report? Pretty much what you expect. This is embedding an entire report into your page. It's got a couple required parameters here. One is authentication type, and you'll see me mention this a couple times. There are two types of authentication that we provide in the SDK. One is guest authentication. So if you have guests set up on your system, then you can set authentication type to guest to have the report automatically log in as the guest user. So this skips any type of user intervention authentication that would happen on the web page, and it uses the guest user. This is perfectly if you have a public system with guests already set up, and you want everybody to view this report as the same guest user. The other type of authentication is credentials. So I can say authentication type equals credentials. The difference here is that this will prompt the user for login credentials. And it does this by redirecting to the SAS logon page. So this is us utilizing the security and the authentication capabilities of SAS logon. And what that means is, out of the box, the SDK is going to automatically support single sign-on. So if you have VIA set up for single sign-on, then using the SDK with authentication type credentials will also honor single sign-on and allow that to work seamlessly. So the second parameter here is URL. And this is just a URL pointing back to the location of the VIA server. The third parameter here is report URI, and that's the unique identifier to identify the report that you're trying to embed. Let's skip over for now how you get that report URI. I'll show you a really easy way to do that later on. For now, let's jump over and see what this does. So I have a VIA system that has the built-in SAS Visual Analytics samples, one of these being report analysis. So just to give you a brief overview, this is the report analysis report. I'm going to show you what it looks like embedded in a web page using the SDK. So I have this page, I've got my own custom header, and it's really straightforward. Basically, the only thing on the page is the SAS report element. And as you can see, what this does is it brings in the SAS report. It makes the connection back to VIA, gets all the data, and renders the report in line here in your page, fully interactive. Right? So you can see I'm making prompt changes, doing filters, we're making data calls back to the server and getting that here on the client. So this is all live with a live connection back to VIA. You can also see that we've got other interactions like drill. And all the UI and interactions you expect to see in the report, looking the way that you've designed it from within Visual Analytics. So that's the key here with the SDK. You design your report, your insights, all the data manipulation that you want to do and harness the power of VA through the Visual Analytics application itself. Then you can embed that within the SDK. So this is a real quick overview of what you can do with just a simple embed the entire report. So sometimes that's enough. You want to provide a general portal into some set of reports that you have and expose that in a certain way on your own web page. This is the way to do it. Moving on to the next custom element that we have, and that's the SAS report page. And as you could guess, that is not embedding an entire report, but picking an individual page from a report and embedding that. So I've got two examples here. A lot of the same parameters we had before. The real difference here is page name. So in this case, I've specified the page name, and that will let me embed a specific page. I can also alternatively do it using page index. So this is a zero-based index. So in here, I'm specifying page index number 2. So that's the third page on the report. So let me show a quick demo of this. And the real thing to note here is that while in the report demo, we had all the full page navigation. When you embed an entire page, you forego that navigation, you go straight to the page that you're embedding. Again, this is all interactive. It's all the same functionality you had with the full report, just with an individual page. So if you want to target this, and in this case, I'm actually embedding 2 pages. So I have 2 separate pages of the same report that I want to show at the same time on the same web page, embedded in the same page. So this gives a little bit more of an integrated look. You don't get your page tabbing. Maybe you want to provide your own page navigation mechanism. That could easily be done programmatically with your additional HTML and JavaScript, and then have that load individual pages on the fly. So that's kind of a use of the individual SAS report page. So going to the next, it's SAS report object. And this is the most granular of our custom elements. And this allows the embedding of individual objects or containers. So containers are considered objects in this case. And again, it's got all the same parameters that are provided before with the addition of object name. And I'll show in a bit how we can generate automatically this definition of what the report URI is, what the object name is, or what the page name is for the SAS report page case. You'll also see line 6 here. I've got an additional style property here that's being specified, and that's really just to point out to you that these are just extensions of the built-in HTML elements. This is like a div. This is like an anchor tag, like I said. These inherit all the properties that come from HTML element. And so that includes style, class name. I can style all of these with CSS just like I would style any other visual, or any other HTML tag. So in this case, I'm setting width and height explicitly here, width 100%, height 400 pixels. And it really depends on what kind of layout you want to have in your page. So let's get to the quick demonstration of that. So in this case, I'm pulling individual pieces out of that report. I've got this top section here is actually a container, and it's got 5 different visuals in it. It's got a prompt, which I can see is filtering by year into these key values. So I've got 4 different key values down here. So this is an individual element specified by one SAS report object tag. I then have 2 other visuals down below, each one individual visuals in that report. And you can see that these are each individual SAS object tags, yet because there is interaction defined in the report, I still get that exact same interaction, be it filtering, or brushing, or linking to other pages. All that is still supported here. So that, this is really when you get to what I would call maybe like a mashup situation. These don't have to all come from the same report. I can have multiple SAS report objects in a page pointing to different reports. Now, of course, if they're pointing to different reports, you don't have any interactions defined between them. But there are cases where you have data, different insights coming from different locations, and you want to pull them all together in a way that I can show the user this overall view. It's doable with the SDK here using report objects. It's really easy to do. So I've showed you all the 3 custom elements that we have. And I guess the big question at this point is, okay, great. How do I determine what the report URI is? How do I know what my object name is? And I promise you I would show you. There's a real easy way to do this, and that's using SAS Visual Analytics, the application. There's a functionality called copy link, which will automatically generate the custom element tag that you need. So this will generate SAS report page, and SAS report object tags. And it'll let you choose between guest or credentials. So let's jump back over here to this report. And I'm going to select this object here, cost by primary labor group. If I go to the object toolbar, select copy link, you'll see this dialog pop up, and I've got a couple options. If I click embeddable web component, this is the option that will change the link to be an actual custom element tag. You can see this is generating the SAS report object tag for me, pre-populating the object name and the URL and the report URI, and then optionally changing it to guest or credentials based on what I've chosen. So I can just hit copy link and paste that directly into my HTML page source. And this allows you to easily go to your reports and cherry pick those visuals that you want and dump them right into your HTML page with ease. So moving on, we're going to jump into the JavaScript API. I'm going to try to cover this really quick for you. We covered the declarative HTML custom elements, and that's the way if I just want to statically bring some things over and show them in my page. But if I want to do anything dynamic, I have to get into the JavaScript API. So this example shows here how to access the JavaScript API. And there's a really key bit here. On line 3, you see this object VA report components. This is a global that is defined by the JavaScript library. And off of that lies all of our custom elements. So you see for the SAS report, you have the equivalent SAS report element, custom element. And on that, we've got the properties that mirror those properties that are available on the custom element tag. So things like line 4, you see myreport.url. Line 5, you've got report URI, authentication type. The same goes for SAS report page element and SAS report object element. Again, all these APIs can be seen in our documentation, and they're fully described there. So you can see I'm doing various things through JavaScript imperative API here, and then I'm adding this new custom element, and I'm appending it to the document body. So this is essentially achieving the same thing that we did declaratively through custom elements. We're doing it here through JavaScript. And that's not that interesting, but when you want to get into using some of our other more extensive APIs like data-driven content or parameters, you need to figure out, okay, how do I work with this JavaScript API? So I want to show an example of data-driven content here, and the code example here is not that interesting, but I'm going to give you a quick overview here. Essentially, data-driven content allows you to, or the SDK allows you to connect directly to a data-driven content object. So instead of embedding it using a SAS report object tag like you would connect to it directly. And essentially, you're harnessing its power to pass data in and out of the SAS Visual Analytics report. And so we can do that through this register data-driven content API by passing a handler for the data message. So essentially, by doing this, we can capture the data that's being passed to a given object. And we can take that and we can render our own visuals on the page. This could be essentially rendering your own data-driven content on your web page, or you can modify your web page however you want based on that data. So it's a little bit of a contrived demo to show this, but for a data-driven content, I've taken this page and I've hooked up a data-driven content to gross claim amount. And we're not seeing the data-driven content here. This is going on behind the scenes, and I'm actually going to modify the page based on the value of the data-driven content. So you can see what I did was I put essentially my own type of display rule. And I have said, if the total warranty cost, if the gross claim amount is over $30 million, then I'm actually going to turn my banner red, produce an alert for the user. And this is, like I said, this is a contrived example, but it shows that I'm essentially creating my own visualization out of the entire web page itself. I'm having it respond to the data. So this could be really powerful if you've got complicated calculations going on in your VA report, and you want to expose those calculations back out to your application to show some feedback to the user, to make some automated decisions in order to drive processes through other systems. So there's a lot of opportunity here to get creative and use the power of VA to harness that in your web page here through data-driven content. So next, let me show report parameters. And this is another way to get a deeper integration with your report. Now, if you have a report that actually exposes parameters, you can easily set those parameters on the report object. So here you can see that I'm taking my report and I'm setting parameters. Let's say in this case, this example, I've got a parameter called origin parm, and I'm setting the value to USA. And so in this case, right, I could have some UI in my page, like some custom UI that changes report parameters, things of that nature. So in my example here, using the same report, I've actually taken the filtering out of the report, and I have each of these visuals filtered by the ship year parameter, right? And what I've done is created my own custom component here in the web page that allows me to pass the year in as the report parameter. And you can see as I click these, I'm calling set parameters with the ship year parameter to 2017, and that sets that on these visuals through the report parameter feature. And again, there's a lot of potential here. Parameters, in this case, I'm using a parameter to do filtering on the report data. I could use parameters to create more complex calculated columns using those values. You can use it for ranking, display rules, etc. So this has a lot of potential there. So just as a recap, what I've shown how to load the SDK. I've shown how to work with our custom HTML elements, and I've shown how to use our JavaScript API to get deeper integration with report parameters as well as data-driven content. So I've got a couple extra resources here that should be useful. Again, this is what I showed initially was the developer.sas.com documentation. We'll also have a GitHub page for the Visual Analytics SDK, and that's where you'll find some straightforward example HTML pages that we've published to show the various capabilities of the SDK. And also, I've got a link here to the NPM location for the actual package. So this will, if you're interested in seeing what versions are out there, you can get that from NPM directly. So thank you very much for attending this virtual paper presentation. And I hope you've learned a lot about the SDK and seen the value that it can provide for you on top of your SAS Visual Analytics installation. So if you have any questions for me on this presentation, the SDK in general, feel free to reach out, bradley.morris@sas.com. Thanks again for joining.